Marriage can be quite ironic. After spending 40 years building a life with someone, raising children, sacrificing personal dreams, and standing by them through every success and failure, one day they may look at you as if you are a stranger and walk away. My name is Barbara Henderson, and at 70 years old, I believed I had a partner and companion who would grow old with me. Instead, I found that my husband valued his freedom more than our shared life. However, what he did not realize was that I had my own definition of freedom, and it was about to transform everything. Before I elaborate on what transpired, I would like to know where you are watching from. Please share your location in the comments. I appreciate knowing that I am not alone in this experience and that others understand the feeling of being underestimated. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was a Tuesday morning in March, a day I remember well because it had been our grocery day for 38 years. I was preparing coffee in our kitchen in Charleston, South Carolina, the same kitchen where I had made approximately 4,600 breakfasts for my husband, Richard. The sunlight was streaming through the window, illuminating the countertops, and I was contemplating dinner when Richard entered with his suitcase, not a weekend bag, but the large suitcase we used for international trips. "Barbara, we need to talk," he said. Those 5 words, the ones that precede the unraveling of your entire world. I slowly set down my coffee mug. Okay. He couldn't even look at me. This man, who had promised me forever on our wedding day, was staring at his shoes like a guilty child. "I'm leaving," he stated. "I've rented an apartment downtown. I'll come back for the rest of my things this weekend." The words were incomprehensible, and I laughed nervously. "Leaving? Leaving for what?" "Leaving you, Barbara. I want a divorce." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too bright, too ordinary for the moment that was dismantling my life. "Why?" I managed to whisper. Then came the part that still incites my anger. He looked at me, truly looked at me, and said, "I want my freedom. I've spent 40 years being responsible, being a husband, being a father. I've provided for this family, worked at the same company for 35 years. Now I want to live for myself. I want to travel, meet new people, and experience life without obligations." He wanted freedom from me, from our marriage, from the life we had built together. I stood there in my bathrobe, my 69-year-old face bare of makeup, my hands still warm from the coffee mug, and I realized something devastating. I had become his prison. "So that's it? After 40 years, you're just done?" He picked up his suitcase. "I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be taken care of financially. The house is paid off. You'll be fine." And then he walked out just like that. The sound of the door closing behind Richard was the loudest silence I had ever experienced. I stood in that kitchen for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. The coffee maker continued to gurgle, the morning light still streamed in, and everything looked precisely the same. Yet my entire world had shifted off its axis. After 40 years of marriage, you don't just share a life, you share a rhythm. I knew Richard's schedule better than my own. I understood his preferences. He liked his shirt starched, took his coffee black with 1 sugar, and became irritable if he didn't eat by 6:30. I had organized my entire existence around being his wife, and now I was simply Barbara. The initial days were mechanical. I called our daughter Jennifer, who lived in Atlanta with her family. She was furious and heartbroken for me, ready to drive down immediately. I told her not to. What could she do? Sit and watch me fall apart? Our son, Michael, was working overseas in Germany. The time difference made his anger feel distant, but I could hear it crackling through the phone line. "Dad's having a midlife crisis at 70. Is he insane?" Perhaps he was, or perhaps I had been foolish not to see this coming. Friends began to call. The Whisper network in Charleston spread faster than any news outlet. Richard had left Barbara after 40 years. Can you imagine? Poor Barbara, what will she do? I loathed that sentiment. Poor Barbara, as if I were some helpless creature incapable of functioning without a man. What nobody knew, what nobody had ever bothered to ask, was that before I became Richard's wife, before I became Jennifer and Michael's mother, I was someone entirely different. I was Barbara Mitchell, third in my class at the College of Charleston with a degree in business administration. I had job offers from 3 different firms in Charlotte, and dreams of starting my own consulting company. I had ambition that burned so brightly it sometimes frightened me. Then I met Richard. He was charming and ambitious, working his way up at Kellington Manufacturing, a mid-sized company that produced industrial equipment. He spoke of his future as if it were a certainty, and somehow I became swept up in that vision. We married 6 months after we met. I was 29 and he was 31. "Once I make junior executive, we'll be set," he promised. "Then you can do whatever you want." But then Jennifer was born, then Michael, and Richard's promotions required relocations, first to Columbia, then back to Charleston. My career was placed on hold. Temporarily, we said, just until the kids are older, just until Richard is more established. That became the refrain, just until. 40 years of just until. Now sitting in my empty house with divorce papers on the way, I confronted a realization that filled me with both rage and a strange exhilaration. I had sacrificed everything for a man who had just given up on me. Richard wanted freedom? Fine. What he did not understand was that he had just liberated me as well. I was about to remind him and everyone else exactly who Barbara Mitchell Henderson was. Grief manifests in peculiar ways. Some people eat, some stop eating, some sleep for days. Me? I became curious. A week after Richard left, I found myself at my computer at 2 a.m., unable to sleep, when I decided to look up Kellington Manufacturing. Richard had worked there for 35 years, rising from junior accountant to chief financial officer. It was his entire identity. When people asked what he did, his chest would puff out as he proclaimed, "I'm CFO of Kellington." I had attended countless company dinners, Christmas parties, and retirement celebrations. I knew the CEO, Marcus Kellington, and his wife, Patricia, and had engaged in small talk with board members. I had played the supportive wife role perfectly, yet I had never truly paid attention to the business itself. Now, I delved deep. Kellington Manufacturing had annual revenues of approximately $48 million and employed 230 people. It had been family-owned for 3 generations. However, recent news articles indicated that Marcus Kellington was aging at 76, and his children had no interest in taking over the company. Rumors of a potential sale circulated. I dug deeper, utilizing some of the research skills I had developed during my abbreviated business career decades ago, accessing financial databases, industry reports, and local business journals. What I discovered was captivating. Kellington Manufacturing was profitable but stagnant, relying on outdated methods. Its primary contracts were with 3 major clients, all of whom were aging or consolidating. The company needed innovation, diversification, and fresh leadership. Marcus Kellington was actively seeking a buyer. The asking price, according to a buried business broker listing, was $32 million. I leaned back in my chair, heart racing. $32 million. I didn't have that amount. Richard and I had savings, retirement accounts, and a house, but nothing close to that sum. Even with a divorce settlement, I would be comfortable but not wealthy, certainly not buy a company wealthy. Yet I couldn't stop thinking about it. Richard's entire identity was tied to that company. What if I became that buyer? The idea seemed absurd, impossible. I was a 70-year-old woman who hadn't worked in the business world for 4 decades. I had been a stay-at-home mother, a volunteer, a garden club member. Would anyone take me seriously? However, as I pondered, the idea took root. Richard wanted freedom from me. What if I became his boss? What if the woman he discarded, deemed no longer useful, became the person controlling his career, salary, and future? I smiled in the darkness of my study. It was a crazy notion. Absolutely insane. Yet I had spent 40 years being reasonable, supportive, and conforming to expectations. Perhaps it was time to be unreasonable. Perhaps it was time to shock everyone, including myself. You cannot purchase a company on anger alone. I learned that quickly. The morning after my late-night revelation, I awoke with renewed purpose. For the first time since Richard left, I felt not destroyed, but dangerous. However, being dangerous without a plan is merely reckless. I needed assistance, real help that understood mergers, acquisitions, and high-stakes business negotiations. I called the one person I knew would listen without thinking I had lost my mind, Thomas Chen. We had known each other since college, having taken several business classes together. While I raised children, Thomas built a career as a mergers and acquisitions attorney in Charlotte. He was semi-retired now, but still consulted on significant deals. Barbara Henderson, he said when he answered, surprise evident in his voice. It's been at least 3 years. How are you? Richard left me, I stated, foregoing small talk, and I want to buy his company. There was a long pause. I'm going to need you to repeat that. I explained everything: the abandonment, the divorce, my research into Kellington Manufacturing, and my admittedly insane idea to acquire the company where my soon to be ex husband worked as CFO. To his credit, Thomas did not laugh or dismiss me as emotional. He listened. Okay, he finally said. Let's say you're serious. Do you have $32 million? No, but I have options. I've been thinking about this all night. The house is worth about $1.2 million. My divorce settlement should be substantial. Richard has significant retirement accounts and investment portfolios. Combined with my own savings, I could potentially access 3 to 4 million in liquid assets. That's nowhere near enough, which is why I need investors, silent partners who see the potential in Kellington Manufacturing and are willing to take a chance on me turning it around. Thomas was quiet, contemplating the logistics. Barbara, I'm going to be straight with you. This is complicated. You would need to convince investors that you can run a manufacturing company despite having no recent business experience. You would need to conduct due diligence, negotiate terms, structure the deal, and do it quickly before someone else snatches up the company. This isn't revenge. It's a multi-million-dollar business transaction. I understand. Do you? Because once you start this process, there's no going back. If word gets out that you're attempting to buy Kellington, it will spread through Charleston like wildfire. Richard will know. The entire community will know. You'll be under a microscope. I contemplated that. The gossip, the judgment, the whispers of poor Barbara turning into crazy Barbara. I realized I didn't care. For 40 years, I had worried about others' opinions, about being the perfect wife, mother, and hostess, about not causing waves or scenes. Richard had freed me from all of that. Thomas, I said quietly, I've been invisible for 40 years. Perhaps it's time for people to see me. He laughed. All right then. When can you come to Charlotte? We have work to do. Tomorrow, I replied. I'll be there tomorrow. Raising $32 million is not for the faint of heart. Thomas connected me with his network: private equity firms, angel investors, retired executives looking for intriguing opportunities. Over the next 6 weeks, I pitched my vision for Kellington Manufacturing to 17 different potential investors. Most meetings followed a similar pattern. I would walk into glass tower conference rooms in Charlotte or Atlanta, dressed in the most professional attire I could assemble from my outdated wardrobe. They would see a 70-year-old woman. Their expressions would shift to polite skepticism, as if I had wandered into the wrong meeting. Then I would present. I had researched everything: Kellington's financials, client base, competitors, and market trends in industrial manufacturing. I identified 3 key areas where the company was losing potential revenue: outdated equipment limiting production capacity, failure to pursue contracts with emerging tech companies needing specialized parts, and zero investment in sustainable manufacturing practices that were becoming industry requirements. Kellington Manufacturing is profitable despite itself, I told a room full of investors in Atlanta. Imagine what it could achieve with a proper strategy. Some investors were intrigued, others dismissed me outright. Mrs. Henderson, one particularly condescending man in his 50s, said, "With all due respect, your business experience is from the 1980s. Manufacturing has changed significantly." "You're correct," I replied, "which is why I would hire a strong operational team with current expertise. My role would be strategic oversight and ownership. I'm not trying to run the factory floor. I'm trying to transform the business model." He remained unconvinced, as did investors 6, 9, and 12. However, investor number 13 was different. Her name was Patricia Okonkwo, a Nigerian-American entrepreneur who had built and sold 3 companies in various industries. At 62, she was sharp and direct. "Why do you really want this company?" she asked. "And don't give me this speech about untapped potential. I've read your materials. Tell me the truth." So I did. I shared my story about Richard, being left after 40 years, feeling erased and invisible, and my desire to prove that I was more than just someone's wife. Patricia leaned back in her chair, studying me. You want revenge. I want recognition, I corrected her. There's a difference. She smiled. Is there? Revenge is destructive. It's about hurting someone. Recognition is about proving your own worth. I genuinely believe I can turn Kellington around. But yes, the fact that my ex-husband works there and will have to watch me succeed is indeed satisfying. Patricia laughed, a genuine laugh. I like you, Barbara. You're honest. Too many people in business hide behind corporate speak. All right, I'm in for $6 million, but I want quarterly reports and a seat on the advisory board. Done. Over the next 3 weeks, Thomas and I assembled the remainder. Patricia introduced 2 other investors from her network. A private equity firm committed $12 million for 40% equity. I leveraged everything I had: the house, Richard's retirement accounts that would become mine in the divorce settlement, and my savings for another $4 million. By mid-June, we had it, $32 million. Thomas prepared the offer to purchase Kellington Manufacturing, and then we awaited Marcus Kellington's response. Richard remained oblivious to what was coming. Marcus Kellington personally called me on a Thursday afternoon. Barbara, Marcus Kellington here. I received a purchase offer for my company, and your name is on it as the primary buyer. Is this some kind of mistake? I took a deep breath. No mistake, Marcus. I'm serious. You want to buy Kellington Manufacturing? Yes. There was a long pause. I could almost hear him recalibrating everything he thought he knew about me. Does Richard know about this? Not yet. I would appreciate it if it remained confidential until the deal is finalized. This is a legitimate business transaction, Marcus. I have the capital, investors, and a solid growth plan for the company. Thomas Chen is handling the legal side. You can verify everything through him. Barbara, I've known you for over 30 years. You've been to my home. You're a lovely woman. But, and please don't take this the wrong way, you're not a businesswoman. You've been a homemaker. I anticipated this. I was a businesswoman before I became a homemaker. I graduated at the top of my class in business administration with offers from multiple firms. I set that aside for my marriage. Now I'm reclaiming it. But manufacturing, it's not exactly what? Not exactly appropriate for a 70-year-old woman. Marcus, you're 76. If you can run this company, I can certainly own it. He laughed at that. Fair point. Look, I'll be honest with you. I've had 2 other offers, both from larger manufacturing conglomerates. They're offering similar prices, but with clauses that would mean layoffs and restructuring. Your offer promises to keep the current workforce intact. That's correct. I believe Kellington's strength lies in its people. I want to invest in them, not gut them. Another pause. I'm going to need to meet with you and your investors. Due diligence. Can you come to Charleston next week? Absolutely. The meeting took place 6 days later in Kellington's conference room, the same room where I had attended countless tedious company dinners, smiling politely while men discussed business. This time I sat at the head of the table. Patricia Okonkwo joined via video conference, as did representatives from our private equity partners. Thomas Chen sat beside me, our documentation impeccable. Marcus reviewed everything: financials, business plan, transition strategy. His lawyers were present, asking pointed questions. 4 hours later, Marcus set down the final page. Your plan is solid, more solid than I expected, frankly. You're offering fair value, keeping my employees and honoring existing contracts. He looked directly at me. But I have to ask one more time. How does Richard factor into this? He's my CFO. This will be extraordinarily awkward. That's between Richard and me, I said calmly. As far as the business is concerned, he's a valuable employee with institutional knowledge. Unless he chooses to resign, I have no intention of terminating him. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then extended his hand across the table. All right, Barbara, you have a deal. We shook hands. Just like that, I became the owner of a $48 million manufacturing company and my ex-husband's boss. If you are enjoying this story and wish to see what happens next, please subscribe, as this is just the beginning. The closing took 3 weeks. Lawyers, paperwork, financial transfers. It felt like the longest 3 weeks of my life. Richard still had no idea. The official closing was scheduled for July 15th, and I would be introduced as the new owner of Kellington Manufacturing during a company-wide meeting. Richard would be present. I barely slept the night before, not from anxiety, but from anticipation. The meeting was set for 9 a.m. at Kellington's main facility. I arrived early, accompanied by Thomas, Patricia, who had flown in for this moment, and Marcus Kellington. Marcus had informed his leadership team that the company had been sold and that the new owner would be introduced that day, but he had kept my identity confidential per our agreement. As far as Richard knew, he was simply attending a standard announcement meeting. Employees filed into the large assembly area, 230 people, some curious, some anxious about what new ownership might entail. I saw Richard arrive with several other executives. He looked good, tanned, relaxed. His newfound freedom apparently agreed with him. He had not yet noticed me. I stood in a side office with Patricia and Thomas, watching through the window. "You ready?" Patricia asked. "I've been ready for 40 years," I replied. At precisely 9 a.m., Marcus approached the podium. The room quieted. "Good morning, everyone. I know there has been speculation regarding the company's future. As you know, I have been exploring options for succession planning. I'm 76. My children are not interested in the business, and I wanted to ensure Kellington Manufacturing went to someone who would preserve its legacy and invest in its future." People nodded. Richard stood with his arms crossed, looking professional yet slightly bored, as though he had sat through countless meetings just like this. Marcus continued, "I am pleased to announce that we have a new owner, someone who is committed to keeping our workforce intact, honoring our contracts, and bringing fresh vision to our operations. Someone who understands the value of this company and its people." He paused, then looked toward the side office where I stood. "Please welcome the new owner of Kellington Manufacturing, Barbara Henderson." I walked out. The silence was deafening. Every head turned. 230 pairs of eyes landed on me, but I was focused solely on one person. Richard's face cycled through 5 emotions in 3 seconds: confusion, disbelief, recognition, shock, and finally, perhaps horror. Our eyes met across the room. I walked to the podium, calm and collected, despite my racing heart. I had prepared remarks, but Richard's expression made me want to deviate from the script. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady. "For those who don't know me, I'm Barbara Henderson. Some of you may recognize me from company events over the years. I was married to your CFO, Richard Henderson, for 40 years." The use of was deliberate. I noticed Richard flinch. "I understand this is unexpected, but I want to assure you that this is a legitimate business acquisition backed by experienced investors. I'm here because I see tremendous potential in this company. We are going to modernize our equipment, pursue new contracts, and position Kellington Manufacturing as a leader in sustainable industrial production." I outlined my vision: 5 minutes of concrete plans, financial commitments, and timelines for changes. The employees began to relax. These were real plans, not corporate platitudes. However, Richard appeared as though he might be ill. When I finished, Marcus opened the floor for questions. A dozen hands shot up. Richard's was not one of them. He simply stood there, staring at me as if I were a ghost, or perhaps as though he were seeing me for the first time. After the meeting, Marcus provided me with a tour of the facility. My facility now. I explored the production floor, offices, and break rooms. Employees were polite but clearly processing the shock. Richard had disappeared immediately after my announcement, leaving through a side entrance, according to Marcus. "Didn't say a word to anyone. Would you like me to call him?" "No," I said. "He will need time to process. We will talk when he is ready." However, I was not going to chase him. That was not the point of any of this. I spent the remainder of that first day meeting with department heads, reviewing operations, and asking questions. I had much to learn, and I was not going to pretend otherwise. "I don't know everything about manufacturing," I informed the operations manager, a woman in her 50s named Carol, who had been with the company for 23 years. "But I know how to analyze systems, identify inefficiencies, and listen to those who do know. Tell me what's working and what's not." Carol appeared surprised that I was genuinely asking. "Well, our main bottleneck is in quality control. We're using the same inspection process we've used for 15 years, but with newer contracts requiring tighter tolerances, we're creating backups. We need updated testing equipment. How much? about $200,000 for the system we need. I pulled out my phone and made a note. Get me a full proposal by Friday. If the numbers make sense, we will move forward. Her eyes widened. Just like that? Just like that. Marcus has been conservative about capital expenditures because he was planning to sell. I am planning to grow. Different priorities. Word spread quickly through the company. The new boss was actually listening and willing to invest. By 3 p.m., my temporary office, Marcus's old office, which I was using until I could set up my own, had a line of people waiting to speak with me. Suggestions for improvements, complaints about processes, and ideas for new products. I listened to every single one. At 5:30 p.m., when the day shift was ending, my assistant knocked on the door. Yes, I had an assistant now, Marcus's longtime secretary, Denise, who had agreed to stay on. Mrs. Henderson, your ex-husband is here. He wants to speak with you. There it was. Send him in, I said. Richard entered the office looking as though he had aged 5 years in 8 hours. His tie was loosened and his face was pale. Barbara, he began, I can't. How did you? How did I buy a company? I finished for him. Investors, capital, and a solid business plan. It's not that complicated when you actually have ambition. He flinched at my words. You did this to humiliate me, he asserted. No, I replied calmly. I did this because I saw an opportunity and seized it. Your presence here is incidental to my business objectives. Incidental? Barbara? I've worked here for 35 years. I'm the CFO. You can remain the CFO, assuming you are good at your job. Are you good at your job, Richard? He stared at me as if I had slapped him. You know I am. Then we don't have a problem. This is a business, not a marriage. You wanted freedom from personal obligations. Here it is. We are now purely professional colleagues. I'm the owner. You're an employee. That's the extent of our relationship. Richard attempted to resign twice in the first month. The first time, I rejected it. You have institutional knowledge this company needs during the transition. Your resignation would be detrimental to operations. The second time, I called his bluff. If you genuinely want to leave, I won't stop you. But running away because you're uncomfortable isn't freedom, Richard. It's cowardice. He stayed. It was not easy for him. I could see that. Each day, he had to witness me making decisions, leading meetings, and transforming the company he believed he understood. And transform it I did. Within 3 months, we upgraded our quality control systems, secured 2 major new contracts with tech companies, and implemented a sustainability initiative that garnered us features in an industry magazine. Revenue increased by 18%. Employee satisfaction scores rose for the first time in 5 years. I hired a brilliant operations director, promoted Carol to VP of Quality Assurance, and brought in a young marketing manager who understood how to position us for 21st century manufacturing. The company was thriving. Richard, meanwhile, was competent but diminished. He performed his job, managed finances, reported to me weekly, and attended meetings, yet the swagger had vanished. The man who had walked out of our marriage seeking freedom now sat in my office every Friday afternoon for status updates, answering my questions and justifying his decisions. I wasn't cruel. I never berated him or made personal remarks. I was professional, fair, and demanding of excellence, just as I was with every other employee. However, the power dynamic had shifted irreversibly, and we both recognized it. The Charleston community was appalled. Dinner party conversations halted when I entered a room. I overheard whispers. Can you believe she bought his company? Is that even legal? Isn't that a conflict of interest? My friends were divided. Some believed I was brilliant. Others thought I was being vindictive. Jennifer flew down from Atlanta to see me. We had lunch at my favorite restaurant downtown. Mom, are you happy? She asked directly. Really happy, or are you merely proving a point? I pondered that. Both, I admitted. I'm proving a point, and I'm happy doing it. Your father thought I was obsolete, that I had spent 40 years being nothing but his wife, and that I would have no identity without him. He was wrong, Jenny. I had an identity. I just stored it away. Now I've taken it back out. She smiled. Good. He deserved this. Perhaps, I replied, but that's not why I did it. I did it for me. By month 6, an interesting development occurred. Richard knocked on my office door after a Friday meeting. Barbara, can we talk off the record? I gestured to the chair. All right. He sat, then stood, then sat again. I was wrong about leaving, about thinking I needed freedom from our marriage. I was an idiot. I waited. You're incredible. Watching you run this company, transform it, command respect from everyone. I realize now that I never really saw you. I took you for granted for 40 years. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely sorry. It was the apology I had awaited months to hear, and I felt absolutely nothing. Thank you for saying that, I replied calmly. But I don't need your validation anymore, Richard. I don't need you to see me. I see myself. Richard eventually resigned, not out of spite or embarrassment, but because at 71, he genuinely wished to retire. He relocated to Florida, found a condo near the beach, and took up fishing. We are not friends. We are not enemies. We are merely two individuals who once shared a life and no longer do. The divorce was finalized while I was in the midst of negotiating our largest contract yet, a 5-year deal with a major aerospace company. I signed the papers in my office between meetings, hardly missing a beat. People often ask me if I regret buying the company, becoming Richard's boss, and making such a dramatic statement. I do not. Not because of what it did to Richard. That was never truly the point. Despite appearances, I do not regret it, because it restored something I had lost decades ago: myself. For 40 years, I had been invisible, simply Richard's wife, Jennifer, and Michael's mother, the woman who brought potato salad to potlucks and organized charity fundraisers, who smiled pleasantly at dinner parties. All of those roles were real, but they were incomplete. I had forgotten that I was also Barbara Mitchell, the girl who graduated third in her class, who had ambition burning in her chest, who aspired to build something meaningful. Buying Kellington Manufacturing was not revenge, it was reclamation. The company is thriving now. We have doubled our workforce, expanded into 3 new product lines, and become a model for sustainable manufacturing in the Southeast. Industry publications write articles about our transformation. Business schools have contacted me to speak to their students. I am 71 years old, and I am just getting started. Jennifer runs our marketing division now. She moved back from Atlanta last year. Michael visits from Germany every quarter for board meetings. My grandchildren find it amusing that their grandmother owns a factory. Patricia Okonkwo and I have become close friends, and we are already discussing which company to acquire next. As for Richard, I heard through mutual friends that he is dating someone, a woman in her 60s who enjoys fishing as much as he does. Good for him. I genuinely mean that. He wanted freedom. He has it now, and so do I. The difference is that I used my freedom to build something, prove something, and become someone I had always been capable of being, but had never permitted myself to be. That is what I want you to understand. If you are watching this and feeling invisible, discarded, or as though your best years are behind you, they are not. You are not obsolete merely because someone else failed to see your value. You are not finished just because one chapter of your life has closed. You are not limited by others' narrow visions of who you should be. I bought a company at 70 years old with no recent business experience, turned it around, and made it more successful than it had been in decades. If I can do that, imagine what you can achieve. The only person who can make you invisible is you. I chose to be visible. That is my story, the woman who transitioned from an abandoned wife to a company owner, from invisible to unforgettable. I would not change a single thing. Please subscribe to my channel. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. With love and respect.